This is NTV.
On Wednesday, Uganda's national carrier commenced its commercial flights after 18 years of collapse due to mismanagement and corruption. But with most of state-owned airlines, except Ethiopian Airlines, choking on losses, questions abound whether the airline will not only be just a flag carrier, but also become a profitable venture. To discuss tonight this and many more, I have Honorable Captain Mike Mukula, who is a politician, a businessman, and a pilot. And also have the Honorable Mwanga Kivumbi, who is a member of parliament representing Butambala County. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much once again for having responded to our invitation, gentlemen. And let me begin with you, Honorable Mike Mukula. By the way, I haven't seen you in media for quite some time.
It's been a while.
It's been a while, so we'll be back. We
media,
are also reviving you in a way.
I've been in media verse.
The revival of the Uganda Airlines with its inaugural flights from Entebbe to Jomo Kenyatta was really, for lack of a better word, shambolic. Why prepare for such a big day and not make it so seamless? Expose yourself, yet you are supposed to be at your best, because that's when you project your charm offensive, your organizational abilities, your skill, and say, guys, I am back. That was not like somebody who is back in business.
Yeah, it's true. There were a few mistakes. And this is what you expect from a startup. These are what you call teething problems. And it's until they get their act together. It will take time for...
We cannot afford to have an airline having teething problems, because a mishap or a teething problem for an aircraft, that's a disaster. So
No.
you cannot even be using words of teething problems, because we can't afford to have that in a business of an airline, can we?
No, I think the preparations, in my own view, there are a number of things that needed to be put together. They should have rehearsed. They should have done the homework. They should have really prepared for this. You know, the English say the first, the test
First-
of the eating.
The first impression is
the
the
first
last,
impression
is
is
the lasting impression.
impression. To me, I think that these are all, most of them are new people. And they are starting to catch up with the act, and I'm very sure they will get there. I'm not worried about it. This is a good product. Uganda Airlines is a good product. They have the best aircrafts. I want to tell you that in the entire region, in the entire sub-Saharan Africa, this is Uganda Airlines has got the best aircraft in the whole Africa. The
You're saying this as a pilot, as a businessman, or as the business arm of the NRM?
No, really as a professional. And let me give you a professional view, because there are many people who are professional who are watching us here. The Bombardier aircraft, the 900, the CRJ 900 generation next, long range, is one of the most ultra-modern aircrafts you have, with modern avionics, atmospheric environment, brand new engines, brand new avionics, brand new airframe. And I want to tell you that you have had Bombardiers. Air Rwanda operates a Bombardier, but it's not the type that you have here. Kenya Airways operates a Brazilian aircraft, the Embraer. But I want to tell you that really, for all sex, for everybody to understand, you have the best aircraft that you have now.
This
in our
Bombardier
national
you're
airline.
saying is the best. The Canadian make of the Bombardier. If anything, I'm told, actually, this could be the last aircraft they have made, because they are winding up. Why wind up the best aircraft making company, and here you are allowing it? They have closed shop in Canada.
Well, the position is that when you close shop, and that is the perceptions that they have there, maybe that it's a strategic, I will not speak for Bombardier, but let me speak for the aircraft.
No, you
All
speak for
aircraft,
Uganda
if
that
you-
decided to go and buy aircraft from a company that is winding up.
Well, the
And
point
perhaps
is
they
that
have made, this could be the last to come off the,
let me tell you
of
about
the production line.
Let me tell you about aircrafts. Aircrafts and aviation is the most highly regulated industry in the world. When you manufacture an aircraft, you will maintain the supply of the equipment and spares in perpetuity. And there will always be a maintenance base for that type of aircraft. We have had aircrafts like the Boeing 707, an old generation aircraft, but it is still flying in some countries. The only thing that you know is that over time, the Bombardier 900 generation next, over time, will be phased out, and you bring in brand new aircraft. And Uganda Airlines will have the opportunity to bring in new aircraft as time flows in. So in terms of planning, for the next 5-10 years, this is the right aircraft.
Let me come to you, Honorable Mwanga Kivumbi. In your view, if the inaugural flight was meant to project our return to business, our organizational ability, and make that a charm offensive to Uganda and to the region, did we do it?
Well, I was too busy to take note of how that whole thing pulled off. And because I sit on a budget committee, I sit in parliament, I'm exposed to some facts. I'm not as excited as you, Kamara, because there could be worrying things that need to be sorted out.
Do I look like an excited man this evening because of this?
Yes, you are dreaming of a day that you'll fly a Bombardier.
Oh my God! I think. All right. This is what you actually
with
saw.
your loved one, and don't miss the opportunity when they are still having rates that are affordable.
Well, I've had an opportunity to fly.
No, not a Bombardier.
It's not. It's a
from
good
the
aircraft.
expert.
When an expert tells you, who am I not to doubt him?
To doubt it.
But really, when I'm asking these questions, I'm not asking because I have an excitement. I'm asking because I have an element of fear. That's why I disagree with
First
you.
of all, is it something that the country needs? The answer is in affirmative. There's nothing that gives you pride when you are in a foreign country. You were yearning to go home, and all of a sudden you see a plane that says Uganda Airlines is all out there.
With the national flag.
With the national flag.
But you guys, is this prestige of business you're dealing in?
Even those things matter. Happiness index is not influenced only quantitatively, but also qualitatively. That's why you put flowers in your compound and do the. What do they do? You sleep in flowers?
Wait a minute.
Do you sleep in flowers?
As members of parliament, when you're as a budget committee member, when you're making money to buy aircraft and all this kind of stuff, you're thinking about prestige and this kind of stuff?
Pride. Prestige is also confidence. Yes. If you have confident people, part of the challenge you have in Africa is our confidence levels are very low.
So there's going to be hemorrhage of public resources because you want to have pride?
No, but Patrick, let's look at it this way.
No, I need him to make it better, because you cannot tell us because I want to feel good because I've seen a Ugandan flag on Adene Dule airport in Mogadishu, and that gives me pride.
Yes, when you go to London and you see Uganda House, you feel happy.
Yes.
Okay, you feel we're human beings. If you one day I was in China on the street, you could see, the evening of China when they are out of work, rush hours, you could hardly see a black person. You will see only Chinese, and they are in the hundreds of thousands.
A sea of humanity.
A sea of humanity, and there's no black person. Now, I spotted a black person somewhere. I don't know, you should have been a Nigerian. You can't believe what it meant to me. I said, oh, wait, here we're all surrounded. So this is something that we needed to do yesterday. And countries are investing, some of them, in these projects for all those. Because the aviation industry, as will tell you, in this part of the region, is highly challenged. And it's not the most profitable making industry as of now. They are facing severe competition from very big players that have huge capital. If you're going to face Qatar, Emirates. Emirates has one of the biggest slush funds in this world in terms of money. When Qatar was starting an airline, in one go they had 100 brand new. When Emirates, they had 100 brand new. And when you go and see what Emirates have got on ground, It's incredible. If all of them were to be on ground at any one spot and at any
So
one...
what would be our best
In actual
strategy,
fact,
Honorable
just for you
Yusuf
to
Ombi?
understand,
Yes.
Emirates last year carried 58.7 million people. 58.7 million people. And that's a huge number of people. And Dubai is now the busiest airport in the world after Heathrow. That tells you really aviation industry is highly competitive. It is something that one must go into, especially now. You know, when you juxtapose, when you look at the broader aspect of an airline, it's not just the flag that you want to see. It's not just Ugandans flying in it. The whole thing is that it's supposed to have a multiplier factor in terms of the economy. You're looking at tourism. You're looking at a country like Uganda, which is landlocked. You want to connect your people to the rest of the world. You want to look at the ability for you to carry cargo outside the country.
This is exactly why I want to ask.
There are a lot of factors.
On that inaugural flight, the people we should have had on board would be people like the guy from the promotions board, export promotions board.
Yes.
Maybe you have Kasita, the business leaders.
I agree
maybe
with
you have
you.
Uganda Tourism Board. Maybe you have the current reigning Miss Uganda. Maybe you have the cultural leaders. A representation of the social fabric of Uganda, but also people who are likely to bring in business and project what Uganda has. But that was not the case.
No, I agree with you. And in actual fact, the selection and the criteria that was used, to me personally, could have been better. For you to carry people like the kickboxer, my very good friend.
But for me, I think Gorilla was maybe Gorilla should have been there because he created a buzz.
Yeah, well, he created
Instead
a buzz.
of having
good, but you see, the point is that you note that a number of people were first-time flyers, and that's why you find that the aircraft in certain areas came back when it was messed up. But the point I want to say is that I think
Would you want to elaborate on that?
Well, we've got people maybe having dinner.
Okay.
Yes.
And now I know. That's enough.
Yes.
Okay.
So the point we are making is that we are entering an industry where mistakes are not permissible. Is that everything you do, you can be a small player in a very competitive market, but do you do things right from the word go? And first impressions, as you've said, lasts for a lifetime. Sometimes you don't have a second chance. You don't get it right, an impression is created, you are damned. You know you are in this industry, especially media. You know what that means. Now, but what were the background to all this? When you see the background to all this, you could see the way this was brought to be where we are. Was not elaborate planning. All of a sudden you realize elections are nearby, then you say, we're going to have our airline back. You even come to Parliament, in the annual budget plan is not there. You say, now along the way we'll find money. You come through supplementary. That speaks to you that you did not plan the thing well. You saw the debate there was when Parliament was passing the money. From ownership, you had challenges. From the legal point, you had challenges. That clearly, from the consultant they got for this one, I know for sure. He's been around, but he's a consultant inferior. He's not one that you got from the best performing, but he was the one who you procured as a consultant. Now, for us, our job, from where I sit, is to ensure that we point out to these weaknesses boldly. So that for us, we wish this baby well. But also, if things go wrong, they should not find us having not played our part. We would have wished them well, given them the necessary advice, given them. So now, you'd go, like you are saying, you have entered an industry. Up to now, you are not sure what you are. Are you going to be a company like any other? Are you going to operate under an act of Parliament? That legal framework is not there. Are you going to have a board? Is the board in place? All these things are not in place. Then there you are. So you could see where you are coming from. Now, the government of Uganda, and this is where sometimes as we make a point, the government of Uganda decided to invest in this industry. The investment arm of this government is the Uganda Development Corporation. The director said now we must have a special purpose vehicle for investment, which is the Uganda Development Corporation. Is it in charge of this venture? The answer is in the affirmative. Up to now, your investment arm, you said you will bankroll it by 500 billion. 500 billion. In the annual budget, we've been putting there 50. It is only this year that we raised it to 100. And then we have insisted, can this investment vehicle even have its own vote? It still survives on subvention from Ministry of Trade. And it's supposed to be your own. When you go to China, the way they are doing their stuff and to be where they are, their investment arm of government, even Arab Emirates, the investment arm of government is so powerful. It's a government of its own. Now, you have all those challenges. As of now, we are saying, are you going to be like the earlier you had an act of parliament? Now, this one now operates like any other company, okay, but owned by government. That is a very, very tricky status to be in. Now, for us to have not sorted out even those low-hanging fruits is really discomforting for this venture. And we are a poor country. You know how we got this money? This money has not been borrowed on concessional loan. It has been borrowed, most of them by by securities, bonds. I think Honorable Mukula here could be owning a bit of a bond that I know how they are earning a lot of money. Now, it's very expensive money. You are investing over 1.2 trillion upfront for this adventure. That's a huge investment. Therefore, our big bone of contention that the guys out there, you are saying the manager there temporarily. No, the guys out there need to do things and get them right. Room for failure. There is a man who told me that, what do you do when failure is not an option? You simply have to succeed. But I think for us, we are leaving failure also as an option.
Honorable Captain Mike Mukula, as a pilot, if we were to use Uganda Airlines as an enabler...
Let me first respond to a few things here. My good friend says that our consultant on Uganda Airlines is a failure. No, that is not correct. I come from the aviation world. I hold an airline transport pilot's license. My master's thesis was on management challenges of African airlines in my MBA. When I was in Harvard, I did political and economic reform. This man you have in Mleya, the Zambian, is one of the best aviation consultants you have in the African continent. Number two, the startup of this airline is something that was ongoing because in the manifesto of the National Resistance Movement, I sit in the Central Executive Committee. One of the key things that was agreed on was to revive the national airline after our GDP seemed to have grown over a period of time. It has had a constant growth of above 5 to 6% for several years now. So it means that projectively, over time, we are growing the middle class because of peace and stability. But the point I want to put to you is that the budget arrangements that are done, budgets are not cast in stone. They are flexible. And you'll find that the Minister of Finance, really substantial, is the President. If he feels that the social contract between the party and the people of Uganda needs to be implemented to the later, he will go in and ensure that there will be sub-allocations in the budget. That was what was done. But let me come to the point. This national airline you have started now, as opposed to most of the carriers in the region, Air Tanzania, Air Rwanda Air, Kenya Airways, and so on and so forth, the cost of running an airline and the cost that you load in, 12% of running an airline is really subjected to payments of what you call disbursement loans. This airline has been paid for, these aircrafts have been paid for upfront, meaning that 12% has now been subdued. The other cost that follows in running an airline, 12% or 27%, is on fuel. The cost of fuel has been zero rated in Entebbe Airport.
Meaning what?
Meaning that there are no taxes, there are no tax levies on Jet A1. The other aspect of it is the crew. The crew takes about 12% of running an airline, and so on and so forth. Right now, what you need is the goodwill. We've started this airline. It's a good product. What we need is goodwill from everybody in the country. It doesn't matter whether it's the opposition, those in government, those in the NGO, and so on. We need goodwill to grow this airline. And what I'm saying is that in order to put this airline into a clear perspective, the projections, when you look at, when you study the business plan, which was carried out by one of the best analysts in the country here, Ernst & Young, is that between 7 to 10 years, this airline will be making profit, but it will break even in a short time, especially with this Bombardier. In the next 2 to 3 years, it will have broken even. But to start making profit, the airline in the next 7 to 10 years will be making profit. Because I want to tell you, when you look at the carriers that plow into the region, and when you look at the broader African perspective, Africa contributes only 3% of air travel or the African airlines.
I'm wondering why you actually is very optimistic that in the next 7 years it will break even. Yet you know that there are airlines in Africa that have been running for the last 40 years, 30 years. South Africa, Kenya Airways, and they are not making money.
Well, the point is that look at
they seem to be more organized.
That's why I was telling you that Kenya Airways has borrowed heavily during the time of my friend Nyakundi, who was a Kenyan running the airline. They borrowed heavily for the Embraer aircrafts that they brought into the country. They brought in Boeing 777, which were oversubscribed. A Boeing 777 carries close to almost 300 people or plus. Now, in terms of flights, where would you operate a Boeing 777 and load it in food? It
must be intercontinental. Right?
It must be intercontinental. And you'll find that if you do not carry, if you don't start an airline with the right equipment, with the right operating capital, with the right marketing team, the right cost of maintenance, an airline is also subject to factors like the fluctuation of fuel. These are factors you put into consideration. And I want to tell you that competition in the African continent, especially now within the regional market, Uganda, you've got Kenya Airways, which takes about 17% of the market. Then you come in, next to it comes in Ethiopian, and then Air Rwanda. Then you've got Air Rwanda is at 12% with Emirates, and so on and so forth. These are factors you put into consideration as you launch the national airline. So the most important thing that you put into concept and that you conceptualize right from the beginning is safety.
Okay.
Timekeeping, maintenance, operating costs, marketing. All these are factors, and many others are factors that you must put into consideration. Apart from ring fencing certain areas like travel by government, like parliament, you can ring fence the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary to ensure that $87 million that you spend per annum is tied to the national airline.
Unfortunately, this national airline is not going to the destination that you always go to.
No, but you have what you call interlining under IATA, where you can have interconnectivity, which Uganda Airline now has locked into. We have now Uniform Romeo, which is the call sign for Uganda Airline. These are factors that you put into consideration. Do not forget that for the last so many years, we've been losing over $480 million per annum to foreign carriers, 100%.
Okay, gentlemen, we're going to take a break, and then when we come back, we shall discuss more about this issue. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching On the Spot. My name is Patrick Kamara. My guest tonight are Honorable Mwanga Kivumbi, who is a member of parliament representing Butambala, and Honorable Captain Mike Mukula, who's a businessman, he's a politician, and also a pilot. And we're discussing the revival of the Uganda Airlines. Let's look into the compilation of the people who are running now Uganda Airlines, if you as who sits on the budget committee of parliament, you would want to know who is on board, on that board,
Yeah,
if I may
of
use
course.
that, on the Uganda Airlines board. Do they have the expertise?
The
Where are
board-
people like Captain Mike Mukula, who's a pilot, and the others that can maybe use their experience to enrich
Yeah.
Uganda Airlines?
You expect members of the board to input, especially at strategic and tactical level. And that is not theoretical. You always want to tap practical knowledge. People who've been there, have seen it, have done it. They know things that work. Now, if you pick brilliant people around, maybe because of the position, because you were PS, then you say you sit there. Here you need experience. You need real people
Who understand the business.
who understand the business. Now, when you look at the current composition, you really wonder whether any of them have been running this. If you don't even have it, that's why the consultants come in very handy. And much as you are saying is one of the best, I would have challenged you to say, tell me which airline he has worked for and has succeeded. Because where he worked elsewhere, there
No,
is
he
a
has
trail.
worked in Nairobi.
He's
ALS, he worked very well in
Yeah.
ALS. He's worked in West Africa.
with the challenge, wherever we tried to ask them in the budget committee, tell us where you've worked, your trail.
I know one of them who
No.
was helping in starting up the airline, engineer Ephraim Bagenda, is a man who has been in the industry of almost 30 years.
Yeah,
So-
you needed that kind of experience. But we hope later on as the dust settle, that the right personnel are brought in and you have a knowledge base and expertise that can rise up to the challenge. That's our prayer. But for me, all that speaks to one thing, is that did you do good homework at a concept level? Did you do, because when you do a good concept, then you answer all those questions. You know, at this point, I need this kind of capacity and capability. Now that I'm going in, and our view is that all those questions remained unanswered. And that speaks to the factual, that's why you are even coming in to say, Honorable, with due respect, that you are going to ring fence government agencies into this business. That also poses a challenge. Go to UTL, the biggest data is government. Go to national water, go to electricity supply.
So the problem is that we may fly government officials and the government doesn't pay.
The other aspect that normally happens is when you begin to securitize some of these industries. Say we are flying spies to go, so please make sure so and so is on the plane. You know, quickly we didn't know answer. You know the Kisangani story, how immediately after Kisangani we needed to buy a new presidential jet. So all those all those things, he knows what happens. So the challenge you have in this kind of industry is that it can't afford those mistakes. If you have security operation, no urgency pay, and payment must be upfront and no credit. Now, you also have to call for the discipline of the topmost people in this country, including the president. One day I was amazed. The president wrote a very good letter in the national paper, says he will punish any government official that will consume a supplementary. And said supplementary is bad budgeting, blah, blah. Says, and directed the PS to sack any accounting officer who goes for supplementary. State House, Office of the President was the first one to ask for supplementary. Now, these are the things, they are in, they are well outside this industry, but we are saying that culture should not be imported.
No,
Captain Mike
I
Mukula.
think the most important to touch on before you come in, the most important thing that you want to put together here is that in order to run a successful airline, you must run it in the military style. The timekeeping, the decision making. In strategic management, there's what you call decision making techniques. If you bring bureaucracy into an airline, you kill it. You must be precise and accurate, because you're running an aircraft or an airline or a system that is precise in everything that you do. And you're talking about things like safety. You cannot compromise safety when it comes to decision making. That's why at policy level, you must be very clear. You must have the right people. At operational level, you must have the right people. At the financial level, you must have the right people. And I'm happy that of all the budget sectors, Uganda Airlines is one that has been front-loaded with 400 billion Uganda shillings in advance in order to meet its expectations. Because if you undercapitalize the airline, that is the beginning of the failure. And I want to say that I must commend government and His Excellency the President for having ring-fenced and made sure that the resource envelope to run the airline for the next 3 years ahead has been made and allocated. Number two is that the choice of pilots, what you call the operational team, must be one that is precise, people who are tested, retested, and retested. You do not compromise on safety, because confidence of an airline starts from the people who fly the aircraft. One little accident or one mishap, people will recoil and lose confidence in that. Number three is timekeeping. These are all factors that drive and ignite the confidence in a national airline. If you say you are taking off at 7:15, take off at exactly 7:15. If it is landing at 8, you should be able to land plus or minus 5 minutes before or thereabouts. But it should never at any one time, if you are saying you're going to take off at 10 and then you take off at 3 o'clock, I want to assure you that you're going to have people losing confidence in the airline. Right now, one of the key things that you must have now is to galvanize a population or people who are traveling, who what you call frequent travelers, who had been adapted, who had gained confidence, for example, in Kenya Airways, Ethiopian Airlines, or Rwanda Air, and you want to bring them into the national carrier. That's the confidence building mechanism that has got to be shown by the operators. What does it entail? The cabin crew must be hospitable, smiling, must be there, committed, and be able to give service when necessary, not rude people. Number two, you must make sure that the ground service crew are up to tent, meaning that they must be able to ensure that the reception they accord a passenger is one that gives him the VIP status. It doesn't matter whether it's economy or passenger.
Sometimes you enter into an aircraft, and the aircraft, they project their image, their culture, their language, their food, and everything. And I'm wondering, what is there? I haven't flown, of course, Uganda Airlines. What is there to tell the Ugandan story in the in-flight services? Of course, it's not the language. At least when you fly Kenya Airways, you'll hear them welcoming you in Swahili, Mabibi na Babwana, or maybe in Kinyarwanda, or maybe the Ethiopians in Amharic. I'm sure we'll be talking English through and through. But what is there that is enchanting about Uganda, that in form of the in-flight services?
The uniform must be precise and ideal and attractive, and you must have the right people, the right attitude. Number two, the food that you serve must be the ideal food. It must be something that when somebody jumps into an airline, he compares that with Kenya Airways, Ethiopian, Emirates, and Rwanda Air, what you call the obvious competitors, and say this is a good airline. So to me, the comfort, the communication, when you get on board, they communicate to you in English, but also communicate to you in Swahili, because you'll find that Emirates has got different nationalities, so that you can have passengers who can be able to talk to Spanish, or somebody who speaks Spanish only, or speaks maybe the Arabic, speaks Indian or Gujarati. That's the kind of thing, the common village approach that Emirates has adopted. I think we need to adopt a strategy. If you notice Ethiopian Airlines employs close to about 3,000 cabin crew. The last time I checked, they have over 100 aircrafts. But let me tell you, if you look at the way they dress, the way they welcome you, the way they deal with the passengers, you feel at home. Now, that is the environment that attracts passengers. Because let me tell you, you're not talking about a bus. These are people who are a middle class, who pay for, they want to see value for money. If you're flying, for example, Honorable here flies club class, because that is what he's entitled to as a Honorable Member of Parliament. But the point is that he wants to see that there's
value for that money.
value for that money. And he wants to feel respected. He does not want to call himself honorable. It's the people to say, honorable, you're most welcome. That is the kind of attitude that you want to have. That's why you find that I have Uganda Aviation School, which trains people specifically in those kind of
etiquette
and so on.
But now, if the airline is to make money, Honorable Manga Kivumbe, it should also be as an enabler to their businesses, the tourism industry, trade and stuff like that. How can we at least make it to enable other businesses to thrive?
You see, if you were to start that airline, he said you have to keep time. So what are the likely factors that will hinder? So what is your road network to the airport? If your key passengers are going to be stuck from the capital to the airport, then that is already a natural obstacle in keeping time. Yeah. So when you see you have the express highway, you have the Entebbe road, the one we are using, but as they connect to the city, you do not do the enough planning. Now you are like from the word go, you have a challenge, because if you are going to catch your flight in
but I think that's the reason they are giving you 3 hours of check-in and stuff like that.
No, forget about that. Forget about that. So this, if you are going to think through the entire equation, then you have to know that today, if the other thing is you've chosen to go regional, because domestically you've not prepared. I would have loved an airline, because I normally want to go to Arua quickly. But what is your runway in Arua? What, a passenger will be shocked. It's a shock. It's tarmac. It's maram. So many of these runways. So from all those aspects, you needed to address them and factor them. And you know, this is what, if you are going to also attract tourists, after dropping them in Entebbe, so what? They would rely on Uganda Airlines to extend them to Kasese,
to Bwindi or
to Bwindi,
to Kidepo.
To Kidepo. Now you have not planned for all that, and those are the low-hanging fruits. You are sure if a tourist is going to wind impenetrable forest, then you land in Entebbe. Then what next? So now, and that's a market there is before you even go where because that is where it is a virgin market. It's a blue ocean. Emirates is not going to do that. Kenya Airways is not going to do that. And you have not invested in that. So that's for us, as you are saying, a whole package. If the thing was through the whole package, you would have addressed all those. Now you are going to be having oil people coming in here. They would love to land in Entebbe. If need be, they don't even want to land in Entebbe. They would want straight land in Kabale Airport. Now, quickly, that's I would, in the short time, be preparing for that. Within the short term, you've got to prepare, because that's a given market is there. When you look at the plan, that's not what they are doing.
No,
you are going to go into you are going to go, because if I'm going to fly, you want to fly to India. There is a huge Indian community here, okay, and the distance is short from here. To New Delhi, wherever, to Bombay, to Mumbai, it is short. So these are things we would love to see on the master plan. But when you ask these few facts, I've interrogated them, the answers are zero.
Let me help you here. Phase 1 of the national airline is to start by operating these first 2 aircrafts, the CRJ 900, generation next, long range, with the regional routes. Next month, in fact, early part of October, you'll have the second 2 aircraft being delivered at the same time. Now, what happens is that under phase 1, you will now create a hub in what you call the ring forks, flying into the ring. That's what you call a hub, like a tire of a bicycle. You create that forks. And once you create a hub, by December next year, we'll have the first long-range aircraft. And that is what you call the Airbus A330-200 Neo, next engine option. That particular aircraft will be followed by next one, which will come in January, okay, 2021. Once you have this one now, the other hub collecting aircrafts, what you call bringing them into Entebbe, will now interconnect these passengers into long range into Dubai, into, for example, Bombay, Kwanzo, or to London, and so on and so forth, depending on what you call the market viability. And that's where you talk about the Indians now coming in. But you see, then you start growing. But again, you've got to note that with for you to start flying domestic aircrafts, that's when you now bring in the turbine or turbo aircrafts, which you can use the Bombardier, the 400 turbine that you have. By that time, you expect the population, because of peace and stability and the constant economic growth, you'll have now seen that as you come close, as is projected by fully vibrant middle class will be here by 2040. But as you grow, you'll find that people in Arua will now be able to afford, will have improved on our domestic aerodromes, and people will be able to afford, so that apart from the phase 1 that you're talking about, you also have the domestic, and you now have the international carriers. Let me tell you, Dubai International Airport started very humbly. And there are other amenities that you try and tie into a national or operations of a national airline. Dubai International Airport, last year alone, made more than $2 billion $2 billion from the duty-free shops alone. So you have got to look at tying the entire framework into a broader box of a multiplier chain, which gives what you call the kicking effect into the economy. So an airline is, you grow it not in a subjective manner, but in a very organized, strategic way.
You are an expert. Can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
What's the minimum number of aircrafts that you must have to start to be viable?
The 4.
Because you see why I ask this question.
Yes.
These aircrafts are in the, out there,
yes,
in the air. You also need others to be standby.
Yes.
In the event there is a challenge to address.
Right.
The thing you are talking about a delay is that you may need a small mechanical fix. Okay? As you fix this one, you must have one that will be ready for a go. So that's why I ask you, what's the minimum number? And have you acquired that minimum number?
The minimum number for a viable starting up a national airline, in my view, is 4. Because if you start with 2, and you have, for example, Entebbe is prone to birds, and a bird strike which hits an engine on takeoff, V1 or V2, you'll find that that engine is cooked. You cannot use it again. You'll have to come in and ensure that either you have a change and refix that engine over time, but that aircraft will be grounded while it is under maintenance. If you have 2 aircrafts, it means that this other aircraft will fill in the other ones. In a very unlikely event that again this one is hit by a bird or hits a bird on takeoff, you have grounded the airline. So if you have 4, you have the option of filling in the gap by either leasing or repairing these ones or filling
because
the other ones. So this is what you call strategic operations.
That question also asks, with the 4, how many routes will you be able to...
But the minimum number, I'm sure, is determined by the market. Really.
No. Yes.
It's determined by the market.
It's not. If you're going to operate 4 routes or 5 routes, so the number of the routes you apply necessitate the minimum number.
Let me give you a simple thing. Oversubscribing is dangerous because you'll find that these aircraft will be seated and there is no routes. You do what you call route planning. This is the key thing in startup of an airline. And the routes must be viable. Today, the Uganda Airlines flew to Mogadishu. I think they had 31 passengers going that way to Mogadishu. They had 34 passengers or thereabouts flying back into Entebbe. That's a very good start. It shows you that that route is viable. You understand? This is an aircraft which carries 76 passengers. Nearly half of the seats are already filled up in the first flight. That tells you that Mogadishu is a very viable route. We flew yesterday, I think the airline flew to Juba. They had 8 passengers. Coming back again, they had, I don't know what number they had. Again, that tells you that they still need for you to promote and to do a lot of marketing in that route of Juba. But again, that is comfortable because it takes time for you to attract a market. You need to go down and dig deeper in order to build that market. But to answer your question, I want you to understand and to appreciate the fact that some of the airlines that have had what you call a miscalculation on takeoff, on planning, is because they either oversubscribe in the beginning, take an ambitious approach, or undersubscribe. This optimum takeoff we have for the airline is the correct one. Okay, and it is measured by a scientific, critical, well-documented business plan.
Gentlemen, we're going to take a break. When we come back, I'll open the lines that you two who's watching, you can be a part of this discussion. We'll be right back.
You know,
Welcome back. You're watching On the Spot. My name is Patrick Kamara. My guest tonight are Honorable Mwanga Kivumbi, Member of Parliament representing Butambala County, Honorable Captain Mike Mukula, who's a businessman, a politician, and a pilot, and we're discussing the revival of Uganda Airlines. Maybe I should also give you some piece of news that Joshua Cheptegei has taken gold at the 5,000 meters in the IIF competition. So
congratulations.
Congratulations to Joshua Cheptegei. You know, one of the things I needed to know, Captain Mike Mukula, is that if this airline is supposed to add value, then it should be like an enabler to the other businesses, to the tourism industry, to maybe cargo and things like that. Are we ready? Because we know passenger service is not going to give us money maybe in the next 7 years, but we can maybe leverage on tourism and other things. How do we ensure that the other sectors benefit?
I think the thing is that they are what you call enablers. And that's why I said right from the beginning, some people seem to have misunderstood it. When I say that it has to be run, the airline must be run with military type of precision. Not military way, but military precision. That means that it
to be exact, to be on time and not compromise on safety.
Not compromise on safety. And when you are carrying out an order, it should be that way. That's how Ethiopian Airlines has run. It is successful airline. And that's what we want to copy. There's what you call case studies. And that's what I did in my master's.
I told in the region there's one time when an aircraft left a minister, he called it back to land and take him. So that's the things you don't want to see.
Yes.
That there's somebody, a minister is late.
You don't do that, you don't compromise. When that was the Latigo, the late Latigo, he was the general manager of Uganda Airlines, and a Boeing 707 flown by Captain Sabai, the Tanzanian then, who was the captain on the 707, had taken off. And they were getting to the FR boundary. FR boundary is between crossing into Sudan. And he had just arrived and he had to go to London. And you know what he did? He told the guys in control tower, call it back. Now the aircraft had been loaded with full fuel to fly into 8 hours into London. And he had only just flown maybe about close to 1 hour, maybe 45 minutes to the FR boundary, and he had to come back. Now, in order for him to come and land, because of the weight of fuel he had to dump fuel, to jettison fuel in order to come in with the right weight in order to approach. That is a major loss. You inconvenience the passengers because of one person, And that's why I want to say that in running the national airline, you must completely have it devoid of national politics. Disengage politics out of it. Even the appointments of the board, the managers, political interference must never.
But really, what we saw on the inaugural flight, it's as if you're treating it like a business arm of the NRM, because really, there should have been people from the other side of the political divide. We should have seen the leader of opposition on board, maybe the people power people on board, so that we know now this is a Ugandan thing.
That would be politics. I think
no.
That would be politics. The thing
By
is
the
that
way, if the Kenyans are doing something for them, they forget about that.
No.
Do their business and then they can go
You're
back.
not talking about political compromise. You're talking about marketing and running the airline in a professional way. For me, I would have wanted to see the chief executive officer of MTN. I would have wanted to see the chief executive officer of Uganda Revenue Authority. I would have wanted to see Stanbic Bank, Airtel, and so on. What you call the corporate bodies, the guys who fly.
Yeah. You took Corona.
But anyway, that's for another day.
Okay.
But the point I'm trying to say is that tourism is a very important factor here. Our passenger load has grown from 1.3 million now. We're getting close to 2 million passengers this financial year, which is a good plus for this country.
That also includes the Mwanga Kivumbi who are flying in and out, so that's also a big number.
The government, all the three arms of government, spend about $82 million per annum on travel. He knows how Parliament travels. But all the organs of government spend close to $82 million. But if you want to come in and really spend money the correct way and ensure that this airline has a very precise and clear approach in terms of marketing, we now must sequence and work very closely with the Uganda Tourism Board. We must work very closely with the tour operators. We must work with syndicators of tourist organizations in Europe, in the United States of America, in Japan, in China. Very few people know about Uganda. But we must also ensure that we have the correct publicity. Negative publicity, obviously, has got an impact on tourism in the country. We must build the infrastructure. I'm happy that the roads are properly done now, border to border. But we must ensure that the game lodges that we're building are also up to what you call the world-class standards like Kenya has. But let me touch a little bit here. If you noticed, our competitors made the price or the tickets, the cost of flying between Entebbe and Nairobi, very high. A ticket to Nairobi on economy would be this route between Entebbe and Nairobi before Uganda Airlines came in was the most expensive short route in the world. The most expensive short route in the world, meaning that the amount of money you are spending for a ticket to Nairobi, if you got into SN Brussels or some of these other carriers, you'd go to United States for the same cost. Now, Uganda Airlines, therefore, has got to ensure that the pricing level, which I've seen, $45, then they put the other costs, it brings to slightly below $250, return to Entebbe. That is a good pricing load. It means that we're going to go into a price war now with carriers like Air Rwanda, or Rwanda Air, Kenya Airways, Ethiopian, because routes like Entebbe, Juba, have got other carriers who are flying under the fifth freedom, because there are 9 freedoms that you have. The fifth freedom allows carriers like Air Rwanda, Ethiopian Airlines, to fly into Juba as they do, as they provide. And that was something that was authorized by the Aeronautical Authority and as a means of transport. You now know that between Entebbe and Nairobi, you have Kenya Airways, you have Air Rwanda, you have Uganda Airways, you have Jambo Air, which is low-cost carrier of Kenya Airways, and so on and so forth. So your pricing and your strategy in marketing has got to be to the point, because short of that, you'll find that passengers are going to move to the best carrier, the one who offers the best price, the best service, keeps time, and is precise, and feels that there is confidence with the passengers.
You can take a lesson from Emirates. They have
Yes.
Fly Dubai.
Okay, gentlemen, our time is almost getting out, so let me ask you, Honorable Mwanga Kivumbi, to give us your concluding remark on the show tonight.
I think the point we are trying to make here is that can we, as we wish this one well, can we keep an eagle eye on the obvious obstacles and ensure they are completely eliminated? Have the right perception, have the right legal framework, have the right personnel in terms of board and just personnel to work, the right staffing, but also do the necessary groundwork around Entebbe Airport. That investment is paramount. Not only around Entebbe Airport, but the neighborhood. I would see, I was in a workshop when we were organizing a workshop, teleconferencing, and people from nearby countries are saying, no, we are not going to suffer with that jam. Nobody will get stuck. So the issues of access to the national airport from the main town is always very, very critical. And I still insist you need smart investment. You have already invested in the highway. Do small investment with the roads that connects to that highway. You will beat jam in Kampala and you arrive people quickly.
But that distance can look shorter from maybe Busega to town here. It can be very expensive because of the compensation
and
costs
the
you have to get.
And the delays. So you've got to address all those impediments. And as you've made a case, that the enablers must really be enabled also, because they must be ready for opportunity to repeat. Because if you are not ready, hotels in Entebbe need to style up. Okay, you have quite a number of hotels in Entebbe, but I've already visited some, and they're like, hey, wait a minute. If this is what you are going to have, then you are in big trouble. So for me, I think along the way, you've got to do that homework, but most fundamentally, make sure politics does not come into play.
Okay. No, I'm so happy,
Captain
my
Mukula, your parting shot.
Honorable Kivumbi, you've made a very fundamental statement. And I know you being from the opposition, there's a tendency sometimes for colleagues on the other side, because I've been in parliament, I know what it means. Do not go into political fishing with the national airline. And I really want to tell you, this is a flag carrier which serves all of us. The moment you go into political fishing with the national airline, you're looking for disaster. You will very quickly generate loss of confidence in that flag carrier. All of us collectively must be patriots, must be nationalists. We must embrace this national airline as our own child. We must midwife it and ensure that we deliver it and let it grow. Uganda Airlines will give a multiplier factor to the economy. The trigger mechanisms are so many. And I want to tell you that you may look at it now, the projection in the next 3 years is to carry maybe an average of 396,000 passengers per annum for the national airline. But over time, as you grow, I want to tell you that Ethiopian, when you go to Addis Ababa, you have seen that Bole Airport has grown. You have seen that Addis Ababa has multiplied. Everywhere you go, you will see that the people who supply potatoes, who supply tomatoes, who supply juice, water, and so on and so forth, who are in the village, our economy, our comparative advantage is in agriculture. The fruits, this is an agricultural economy. And I'm happy that now that we are stimulating the economy, this spurring the economy with the oil, which is due to come, I want to assure you that Uganda has a very bright future. Okay. And tourism is our diamond that we must guard and ensure that we revamp as much as possible now that the national airline has come on board.
Thank you, gentlemen, for your insights on the matter. But before we go, we have the images, the pictures of Cheptegei winning the 5,000-meter IAF Diamond League in Zurich. So let me ask my producer.